welcome back to Bursting Bookshelves. This is season 1, episode 2, and we are getting into the book itself this time. So that's to a little bit of historical context.
Yeah. All right. So this book is fictional, of course, but it happens during a very real time in French history. So the book starts after the fall of Napoleon in 1815, when he was emperor of the Isle of Elba in the Mediterranean, close to the coast of Italy. So he was just emperor of this small island in the middle of the big blue sea.
Yeah, got kicked out of France, and somehow was just like, do you guys want an emperor?
Yeah. Yeah, they
kind of
like satiated him a little bit. It's like, oh, you can't be emperor of the world anymore, but you want this island? All right. Anyway, so the ruling monarch at the start of the book is King Louis XVIII. By the end of the book, it will be King Louis Philippe, and if you remember, he was the Duke of Orleans and the former boss of Alexander Dumas, who wrote this book. And so he became king after the July Revolution in 1830. All right, so we're going to jump right into section number 1, which I've titled Marseille because it takes place in Marseille. It's going to be 9 chapters, and how we're going to do it is we're going to go through each chapter. I have notes, and we're just going to go through and talk about each chapter. There will be some passages from the book that I'll read, and then we can discuss those. And so let's just jump right in with chapter 1. So in this first chapter, it's pretty short. There's a trading ship called the Pharaon, and it puts in at the French seaport of Marseille, which lies on the Mediterranean and in southern France. The ship is commanded by First Mate Edmond Dantes after the death of the captain at sea. One of the owners of the ship, Monsieur Morel, he sees that something's wrong. He's a little worried about the cargo, I think, for some reason. So he jumps in a boat and rows out to the ship before it puts in at harbor. And he talks to Dantes. And it is clear from the very beginning that Dantes respects his boss and that his boss likes him pretty well.
Yeah.
So then he talks to the ship's purser, which would be like an accountant. He'd keep track of stores and everything in the ship's hold and stuff. So Morel talks to the ship's purser, whose name is Danglars. And Danglars throws some doubt as to Dantes' actions and dependability by telling his boss about a stop they made on the Isle of Elba, which is where Napoleon is, and about a certain package that Dantes gave to the marshal, which would be one of Napoleon's military people on the island because he had a small military there.
Yeah.
He gave the package to a guy on the island, a package that the captain gave to Dantes just before he died. And also about a letter that the marshal gave to him, to Dantes, to be taken back to France.
Before he died?
No, this was the marshal on the island of Elba who gave him this letter. It's a little confusing, but yeah, it's the marshal, not the captain. The captain gave him the package. The marshal gave him the letter, as far as I know.
Okay.
All right, so Morel actually asks Dantes about this in the same scene, and Dantes pretty much just tells him all he knows, which is the same as above, what I just said. So he doesn't know a whole lot more than just that he has a letter that he's supposed to deliver. He doesn't tell his boss where he's delivering or who he's delivering it to, even though he knows that. But that was not because he was guilty of anything. It is because he was just honoring the captain's last wishes, I believe. All right, so then Dantes turns down a dinner invitation to Monsieur Morel, from Monsieur Morel, which is big because Monsieur Morel is considering promoting him to the rank of captain in charge of the Pharaon, the ship, because Dantes wants to go see his father and his fiancée. His family is more important to him than his job, which is a good thing about him, I'd say. Yeah. In this first chapter, there's just lots of good imagery about Dantes. He is described with glowing words. He's young and healthy and strong and good-hearted, pretty naive. But yeah, he's just a good solid character. He's only 19, so he's pretty young. And that wraps up chapter 1. Okay, then we go into chapter 2. where Dante goes home to his father, and there is a joyous reunion. The two love each other very much. It is abundantly clear. His father, however, has only been living on 60 francs when Dante's left him 300. I don't know how much 60 francs is, but apparently it's not very much. So Dante's was mad about this, that his dad was only living on 60 francs, because their neighbor, Caderousse, demanded that a debt of Edmond's be paid to him immediately, even though Edmund wasn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And Dante's father, he was too proud to ask him to wait, because he was giving him money that he was living off of. And so he was basically starving because he had paid the debt. So, just during this reunion, guess who enters? Caderousse, this neighbor. This neighbor enters, and there is as you would imagine, a somewhat tense exchange between Edmond and Caderousse.
How could there not be?
How could there not be, right? It's like, you just pretty much extorted money from my dad. Yeah, that's not really
like,
cool.
you politely just robbed us.
And yeah.
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. So then, after this exchange, Dantes goes to visit his beloved fiancée, Mercedes, not the car, the lady. And Caderousse follows him down to the street and then talks to, you guessed it, Danglars. Danglars has been following Edmond, apparently, and has some designs against him. And then after this, they go sit in a tavern, outside of a tavern, rather, and drink and await news. All right, so that is chapter 2.
Yeah. They sit near the Mercedes house. One question: how does he know where the lady lives?
I don't know.
That's a little puzzling.
He knows she lives in Les Catalans, which I'm going to get into. It's a small settlement nearby, and I guess maybe it's not very big, so he knows roughly where she lives. Maybe he doesn't know exactly where she lives, but close enough.
Maybe she seemed to be a little popular among the Catalans, from what I read.
Yeah,
it seemed like,
because
I mean, like, everybody knew about her, I guess.
Yeah, and Danglars, he knows Edmond pretty well. Yeah. He actually got invited to the wedding later on.
He wasn't much of a stranger.
No, they knew each other, and they were on okay terms. I don't think they liked each other a lot, but they were on okay terms. Okay, that's chapter 2. Now, chapter 3. And this chapter starts in the nearby Spanish settlement of Les Catalans. Spanish. I think there was just some Spanish immigrants to France that just set up shop in this close to Marseille and just lived there, kind of separate. They were their own people.
They was like, hey, what's up? I'm your new neighbor.
Yeah, they I think they were fishermen. And so they just lived there apart from the French, but they interacted with them slightly, I think. And we start in the house of a Catalan girl named Mercedes. And she is Dante's lover. She is with her cousin Fernand. So remember that guy. And he is madly in love with her.
Remember that guy.
And is asking once again for her hand in marriage. She is still in love with Dantes, however. And she refuses him again. I think this is a recurring thing. He asks and then she refuses.
As one should. It's your cousin.
Yeah, exactly. So she still loves Edmond. She's a faithful fiancé, and she's awaiting his return. And then, in the middle of their argument, Mercedes and Fernand's argument, awkward, Dantes walks through the door.
Hi.
Yeah. Ooh, and Fernand flees a scene of joyful reunion and love. So these two people are very much in love.
Bro saw Dantes and was like, oh, no.
Yeah,
what do I do?
He
Run.
did not like it. He was mad. So, he runs out of the house and towards Marseille, but then he comes across two people sitting in front of a tavern. Danglars and Caderousse.
No wonder.
Coincidences. They are sitting outside an inn, and they're drinking. And Caderousse, by this time, is getting rather drunk.
Yeah.
Not Danglars, though.
I wonder how much he was drinking in comparison to Danglars.
Yeah, I don't know. So they invite him over to bemoan his woes, and that's exactly what he does. He sits down, and they commiserate with him. And by the end of their meeting, Danglars remembers the letter that Dantes has and hatches a secret plan to get rid of their collective enemy. Because he wants Dante's gone because
Mm-hmm.
he wants to be captain of the Pharaon. And he won't be so long as Edmund is around and in good standing with Monsieur Morel. So he wants to get him shut up or, have him taken out of the picture. And Fernand wants him taken out of the picture because he wants
To marry his cousin.
marry his cousin. He wants to marry Edmund's girl. All right, so that wraps up chapter 3. In chapter 4, Danglars outlines his plan of getting Edmund out of the way and using this letter, which he writes with his left hand to disguise the handwriting. By the way, I cannot write with my left hand. This guy is pretty. He's pretty good. Yeah, I'll read the letter while he does that. It's going to take a while. The crown prosecutor is advised by a friend of the monarchy and the faith that one Edmond Dantes, first mate of the Pharaon, arriving this morning from Smyrna after putting in at Naples and Portoferrajo, was entrusted by Murat, this would be one of Napoleon's officers, with a letter for the usurper and by the usurper to the Bonapartist committee in Paris. Proof of his guilt will be found on his person when he is arrested, since the letter will be discovered either on his person or at the house of his father or in his cabin aboard the Pharaon. So then, at this point, Caderousse speaks up in his drunken state on Dante's behalf. So Caderousse, he's a coward. Yeah, it didn't go very well, did it?
No, not at all.
So Caderousse, he's a coward. Maybe he doesn't like Dantes a lot because he's jealous of him. But he doesn't hate the guy. He doesn't want something bad to happen to him. They're neighbors. I guess they, maybe have had a few pleasant interactions every now and then. I don't know.
Before he started mildly robbing.
Yeah, exactly. So he speaks up in his drunken state, because he's drunk at this point, on Dante's behalf. Danglars pretends to laugh the whole thing off as a joke. He knows that Caderousse is pretty gullible at this point, having consumed a lot of drink. And so he crumples up the letter, and he tosses it into a bush. And that's good enough for Caderousse, apparently, because he and Danglars get up and go back toward Marseille. And Fernand, he gets up, and he goes and grabs the letter.
Ooh.
And he takes it away into town.
Tisk, tisk.
And that's the end of chapter 5. I mean, chapter 4.
Feller.
Chapter 4. We're done with chapter 4.
Bro
We're
just
on
does,
to chapter 5 now.
Bro just does anything.
Who does? Fernand?
Yeah.
Yeah, people who are madly in love are kind of do weird things.
Yeah,
sometimes.
I kind of feel like Danglars did that on purpose. Wrote up the letter 100%. In front of him, and then wasn't really. Maybe he wasn't planning on. He was probably planning on Caderousse speaking up against it or something, and then he was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever. I won't do it." Throws it in the bush, very obviously.
Yeah.
And then walks out and plants the idea in Fernand's head that to deliver the letter.
Yeah, exactly.
Tisk.
Danglars is very smart in this scene because he predicts exactly what Fernand is going to do. That's my opinion.
Evilly smart.
So then, we're on to chapter 5. This is the day after, and it is the betrothal feast of Edmond and Mercedes. And it's a wonderful occasion. There's lots of happy stuff going on, lots of
smiles
and imagery that's fluffy and nice, and it's all very joyful. There's
as
joy,
weddings should be,
as it should be. It's a betrothal feast of two people who love each other very much, and the guy's about to get promoted. It's just very good. Monsieur Morel is there. All of his sailing buddies are there. All the people, and importantly, Danglars and Caderousse and Fernand are all also there. And at the feast, Dante reveals that this is actually their wedding feast because they are getting ready to get married that afternoon. Kind of eloping. Yeah. They're getting ready to marry because, importantly, he has to go to Paris for a few days.
Okay.
So they're going to get married that very afternoon.
So did he, it doesn't really mention Mercedes' father ever,
I think she's an orphan.
Oh, okay, that would make sense.
I
was about to be did he ever, talk to the father about it at all? He was just kind of we're getting married.
Yeah, I know. I think they'd been planning this for a while, and I think she was an orphan.
Yeah, that would make sense as to why the cousin was let's get hitched.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so they're going to get married that afternoon. It's all very good, all very joyful, but before this can happen, police show up and arrest Dantes for being a Bonapartist agent. The mood, as you could imagine, was immediately sucked out of the party. I mean, like, the groom just got arrested.
So it went from like to what?
Exactly.
Grandma?
Yeah. Precisely.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point, Caderousse is confused because he thought that letter never got sent.
To some extent, you know.
Like, yeah, he even though he was drunk at the time, he knew enough to realize that, like, this letter's not going to get sent. It's in the bushes.
Mm-hmm.
But then Fernand went and got it, and then he went away to town with it. So he confronts Danglars about this, and Danglars denies everything, of course, and he plays innocent and convinces him not to tell anybody about the conspiracy to get Dantes arrested.
Yeah.
And at this point, Monsieur Morel, on his way to try to get Dantes out of prison, he appoints Danglars to be temporary captain of the Pharaon, which is exactly what Danglars wanted. He wants to be permanent captain, of course, but he doesn't intend that Dantes is ever going to get out of jail.
Yeah.
All right. That's
accidentally
the end
played
of chapter
right
5.
into Danglars' hands on accident.
Yeah. I hate that guy.
Don't we all?
Yeah. All right. So then, chapter 6, we shift a little bit. It's a different betrothal feast. This time with the cream of the town, the aristocracy. Yeah. And it's the betrothal feast of Monsieur de Villefort, who's the local deputy crown prosecutor. So he's the deputy crown prosecutor. He's not the actual crown prosecutor yet, but he's the deputy crown prosecutor, like the second in command, kind of.
Gets called on when the other guy's not there.
Yeah, and he's in charge of handing out justice, pretty much, to the criminals. And he's getting married to Mademoiselle Renée de Saint-Méran. So politics is discussed at the betrothal feast quite a bit, and it's kind of it's a interesting time in the French political scene, I believe. And so, yeah, politics is interesting. And all the people in this room would be staunchly royalist. They would be behind the monarchy. That's why they are successful and where they are. There are also Bonapartists who would support Napoleon. They would be the ones who are being arrested at this point for treason and the like by the monarchy.
Yeah.
And so Villefort is an ambitious character. He wants to build his career under the monarchy, so he is very careful to present himself as a royalist. But during the discussion, it is revealed that Villefort's own father, a man named Noirtier, is a Bonapartist agent. Yeah. No. And
not again.
Villefort does not like this. He knows about this, and he does not like his dad. He disowns him. He resents it completely. All right, so he does not like that at all. And so here, he also talks about his methods of prosecuting, the way he prosecutes and the way he thinks about prosecuting, and he's giving an kind of oration to the guests. So I'll read a bit of it here.
Yeah.
Do you imagine that all these soldiers in Napoleon's who are accustomed to walk blindly in the direction of the enemy pause to think before firing a shot or marching forward with fixed bayonets? And, in that case, will they hesitate to kill a man whom they consider their personal foe any more than they would kill a Russian, an Austrian, or a Hungarian whom they have never set eyes on? In any case, you understand. This is as it should be, because without it there would be no excuse for my profession. As for me, when I see a bright spark of hatred shining in the eye of an accused man, I feel encouraged. I rejoice. It is no longer a trial, but a duel. I go for him. He ripostes. I press harder. And the fight ends, like all fights, in victory or defeat. That is what advocacy means. That is the risk run by eloquence. If a defendant were to smile at me after my speech, he would make me feel that I had spoken poorly, that what I had said was bland, inadequate, and lacking in vigor. Imagine the feeling of pride a crown prosecutor experiences when he is convinced of the defendant's guilt and sees the guilty man go pale and bend under the weight of his evidence and the blasts of his oratory. The head is lowered. It will fall. That's dramatic.
It's different. That's just certainly an interesting way to look upon
prosecuting.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, is that a good way of handing out justice? Because he's deciding whether or not this person is guilty.
I wouldn't say. I mean, obviously now, no, absolutely not. But it seems back then he was less of a like right now we think of a prosecutor, like, you know, you walk into a courtroom, you got the defendant, and then you have the prosecutor, and at least you guys are trying to appeal. I think in this, he's not really like what we think of as a prosecutor nowadays, but kind of like a judge, you know. So
he's deciding the fate.
He's not trying to convince a judge or a jury.
Yeah. He's deciding the fate. So he's supposed to be impartial. It doesn't sound like he likes being impartial. It sounds like he likes it when the defendant is convinced of his guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Which it's not
like pleading guilty.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like a great way to do justice. If you want to hand out justice, you ought to be like in with the justice, not in it for the glory.
Yeah, it seems he's more in there for what he can gain out of it.
Exactly. He's not trying to hand out justice. It's a little ironic. He wants for himself so much that he might not hand out justice. We'll see about that in a little bit. All right. So after the speech, Villefort is fetched away to hear Dante's case, but not before he promises his soft-hearted betrothed Renee that he will be merciful. So she wants him to let the guy go. All right, so that is the end of chapter 6.
Good luck with that, buddy.
Yeah, right. That's the end of chapter 6. And then chapter 7. Villefort interrogates Dantes, and all goes well. Dantes is being honest, and Villefort prepares to set him free until he finds that the letter given to Dantes by the marshal on Elba is addressed to Villefort's own father, Monsieur Noirtier in Paris.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. Mind explosion. Villefort gets extremely agitated at this point, as you could imagine. Mm-hmm. But he still promises to set Dantes free. He tells Dantes he can work it out. It's a little more complicated, but he can work it out. Because Dantes doesn't know about this relationship, and Villefort wants to make sure that he never does. Never figures it out.
Yeah.
So, but will Villefort keep his promise? Will he do it? Will he set Dantes free?
I'm going to go with no.
Nope, of course not. Dantes, still thinking that he will be set free, is taken to the local prison. Then, after a time, he is taken out of his cell. This is all in chapter 8, by the way. He's not set free at this point, though. Mm-hmm. He is taken down to the water and then out onto the bay in a boat with 4 policemen. Mm-hmm. At this point, Edmund still thinks that he will be set free. This proves exactly how naive this guy is at this point.
It's like, I may be on a boat with a bunch of soldiers going away from where I was, but I mean, hey, maybe it's just a roundabout.
Yeah, might be taking me to
It's just the long way.
Yeah, take me to a deserted place that hadn't set me free. That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
But then he convinces one of his guards to tell him where he is being taken. The answer makes him try to escape. He tries to jump off the side of the boat, but he can't do it. The answer is the Chateau d'If. He's being taken to a notorious prison where government dissenters are kept.
Yeah.
And he tries to get away at this point, but he can't. I
like the way the book words it. Dangerous political criminals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dangerous political criminals like Dantes.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, exactly. So he is thrown to the bottom of the boat.
Imagine that. You're 19 and you just got home from probably about a year-long voyage, because voyages weren't very short.
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was a long time to get places. And all you want to do is care for your dad and get married, you know? Your captain dies on the voyage, and you're like, okay, he's entrusting me with this package or whatever I'm going to deliver to this guy. So you deliver the package.
Yeah, he's just respecting his captain's last wishes.
Like, he doesn't even know what's in the package. He doesn't even know the whole regime behind it. He's just delivering this package, doing what his captain says, you know, honoring the captain's last words. And the other guy is like, oh, that's terrible. I'm going to make something out of that. And so then, next thing he knows, he's trying to have a feast for his wedding, and he gets arrested. He's like, what?
And then he's being he's being incarcerated in this big old prison for something that he didn't do.
He's like,
so it all went from really good to really bad really fast.
All right. It summarizes now. It's half mad, basically.
Yeah.
It's like,
he's taken into the Chateau d'If and down into the dungeon, half mad. He languishes there, and he is close to insanity, though he won't quite get there.
Panic attack 400.
Exactly. So then, that's the end of chapter 8. We're on to chapter 9. Last chapter of this section. So, Villefort goes back to the party and informs his guests that he must leave for a few days. He intends to go to Paris. He doesn't tell them that he intends to go to Paris, but that's where he's going. Privately, he tells his fiancée's father, the Marquis de Saint-Méran. Huh?
I was whispering.
Okay.
Sorry.
What were you whispering?
No, it was privately.
Privately, exactly. Yeah. So he tells the Marquis de Saint-Méran to sell whatever government stock he has. I guess they were like government bonds, because he thought that the government was going to go down the tubes pretty quick. He then asks for a letter of recommendation so that he can see the king more quickly than he would otherwise. And the Marquis gives him this letter. Then, as Villefort steps out of the house, preparing to leave, he is confronted by Mercedes. And she, with her appearance, she touches his heart, and with her eloquence and her words, she makes him feel guilty. So this guy has a conscience left, at least some part of it.
Yeah, at least there's that. At least he's got a little bit left.
Yeah.
A little sliver.
So he goes into his house and sinks into a chair, and now I'm going to read another section of the book. Now, in the depths of that sick heart, the first seeds of a mortal abscess began to spread. That man whom he was sacrificing to his own ambition, that innocent man who was paying the price for the guilt of Villefort's father, appeared before him, pale and menacing, clasping the hand of his fiancée, who was no less pale and bearing remorse in his train. Not the remorse that makes its victims leap up like a Roman raging against his fate, but that bitter, muffled blow that intermittently chimes on the soul and sears it with the memory of some past action, an agonizing wound that lacerates deeper and deeper until death. He had just condemned a man to perpetual incarceration, but an innocent man, poised on the brink of good fortune, depriving him not only of freedom, but also happiness. So, he has a conscience left.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so he might have a little bit of... Okay, so he has a little bit more of a sliver. Sliver's about this big.
Yeah, it's not very big, but he has it. He is being assaulted by his actions.
For now, at least.
For now.
As far as this part's concerned.
So at this point, he is about ready to set Dantes free. If Mercedes had appeared again and asked him, he probably would have done it. It says so in the book.
Yeah.
If his betrothed had said anything about it, he would have done it. He was feeling pretty low at this point. But no one said anything, and so he just gets in his carriage and goes to Paris. So then we go to Mercedes, and she spends the night in a mourning delirium, and while Fernand, who actually sent the letter that condemned Dantes, he's the traitor, or one of the traitors, while Fernand sits by and covers, quote, her hand in ardent kisses. Unquote. I just thought that was pretty funny.
It's hilarious.
It's pretty good. So then Monsieur Morel, he tries in vain to find a way to free Dantes. Doesn't work. Caderousse drowns himself in wine to drown his guilt because he knows what happened, but he's not talking.
Bro's like, I got drunk. Something happened. I became sober. Some guy got arrested. I'm going back to drunk. It was better that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Then Dantes Sr., his dad, languishes in grief throughout the night. Edmond nears madness in the Chateau d'If in the dungeon. And Danglars spends the night peacefully sleeping in his bed. He, for one, does not have any conscience left. Let me tell you that.
Definitely not.
All right.
The question is, did he have one in the beginning?
So those are the notes that I have on this first section.
chapter-wise.
Yeah, chapter-wise. But I have some character sheets of stuff that I've given notes on for the characters, such as development, traits, etc. So we'll start with Dante's. So this guy is he's described with very good imagery throughout the whole book. He's innocent and naive, yes, but he's also strong and good-hearted and kind and pretty pure. He's just a good guy, but this naivete just gets in his way, and he doesn't know how to read people, and he's not suspicious in any way, even with people who he might want to be suspicious with.
Yeah, he's only 19 though, so I like the way that he portrays that, like the innocence of a 19-year-old.
Yeah. So he's basically a kid. Yeah. He even says when Villefort asks him whether he has any political convictions or not, it's like, I'm too young. I'm too young to have political convictions.
Yeah.
I care about my boss. I respect him. I love my father, and I am devoted to Mercedes, and that's about it. But he doesn't see past Villefort, even though Villefort clearly intends to send him to jail, even when he says he's not going to.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe him, and then it takes him like halfway to the Chateau d'If. He doesn't even see it coming. He's like, there's this castle up there. I'm going to go over. No, it's that castle.
Yeah, that part's a little outrageous.
And he gets halfway there before he even realizes that he has to be told. Yeah. It has to be spelled out to him that he is going to prison before he realizes it.
The fact that it probably wasn't even like a whole castle too. It was probably like it probably didn't look like what you'd expect a castle to look like.
I mean, I think so. It was a big prison sitting there on the precipices.
Oh yeah, I guess yeah. I just think of it as it would be more like, I guess, kind of shadowy, more like it would be a little bit more.
Well, yeah, because it would have been night. You're saying you couldn't have seen it very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so. That's true. Yeah, but I'd say the words that would describe Dante's in this first section are good-hearted, kind, and naive.
Mm-hmm.
Although, yeah, the kind... Yeah, he's even welcoming to Danglars, who he doesn't like very much. He invites Fernand, who's technically his rival, to the marriage feast. But yeah. So that's Dante's. Now we're going to go to Danglars. And he is described with negative imagery from like the get-go. He hates Dante's. He hates him, even though Dante's is the protagonist clearly in the book. So what would that make Danglars? That would make him the antagonist. So he's the bad guy pretty much from the start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He is also smart. It said that in the book that he was born with an ink pot for a heart. So he's very calculating. He wants money. He's trying to figure all the angles so that he can just get the most advantage. That's why he wants to get rid of Dante, so that he can become captain of the Pharaon.
Yeah.
So he can become captain, so he gets more money.
Pride
and money, but it's mostly money. He doesn't.
Yeah.
We'll find out later. He cares about only money. That's it. Relationships, no, just money.
Yeah.
So that's Danglars. We're gonna learn more about him later.
How old he would have been?
I'm guessing maybe like 25 or something. I don't remember if it says or not, but he's older than Dante's. Yeah. Okay, then we're gonna go to Monsieur Morel. He's a businessman. He came out to the ship. He was worried about his cargo. He wasn't worried about the captain as much as the cargo. He's like, is the cargo okay?
Yeah.
So he's a businessman, and he cares about his cargo, and he also cares about Dante's.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not sure whether that's not just because he's a good captain, and he wanted him to be in charge of the ship, but I think he also cared about him as a human being.
Yeah, it's more like a when you have like a really close like friendship, like your families are friends, and so then you kind of end up becoming closer friends with so me and you, we're friends, and so I became closer friends with your dad than I would have been if I wasn't friends with you.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like
it's kind of like that relationship a little bit.
Yeah, like
because they're in such close proximity, they just like each other because they're both fairly agreeable.
Yeah, like a father figure, but like a little less because he's more like just a friend that can give him advice as a father would. But
he so much to say that I think he cares about him because he tries pretty hard to get him to get him set free, to get Dante set free.
Yeah.
But he's not. Interesting note: Monsieur Morel is not one of the aristocracy. Villefort, who is one of the aristocracy, treats him. Treats him poorly when they meet, and
so he would have been really considered really rich in the area where him and Dante's were, but where Villefort is, he would not.
So in the class that Dante's and his sailor buddies were in, Monsieur Morel, he was up here. He was the big dog. He was their boss. But for the aristocracy, where Villefort was at, I mean, it was a little bit lower. It was not quite not very good. All right, so that's Monsieur Morel. Then we're going to go on to Mercedes. She is a little bit like Dante's in this first section. They're both kind of naive because she doesn't perceive Fernand's innermost thoughts, that he really wants Dante's out of the picture, and she doesn't see a catastrophe like that coming. She's also young. She's probably younger than Dante's, maybe 17 or something. And
which wouldn't have been rare.
No, marriage at that age, it's about standard for this time period.
The rare fact is that she would have been marrying someone who was 19 instead of, because they would have married older than that.
Oh, they might have
done, the woman would be younger, but the guy would be older.
Yeah. It's two people who are mutually in love. I'm pretty sure that might be kind of rare in this time period too.
Yeah.
All right, so she has a strong personality, and she is also pretty faithful because she endured this really storm of proposals. No. The storm of proposals from Fernand. All right, and them as a unit, we see them as a unit together, some Dante's and Mercedes, and they're pretty much the same. They're just kind of naive. They're lost in each other, and they just love each other. It's pretty much that. It's pretty much that simple.
They kind of stay their character growth. They kind of grow together in separate ways.
Yeah, they kind of have a little bit of the same character arc. We'll see that. We'll see that later. They're definitely different, but they have a little bit of the same maturation process.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to get into Villefort. So he is clearly an ambitious man. He wants lots of power, and we're going to see that he wants all the credit for himself, and so that gets in the way of his job, which is handing out justice. So he fails to hand out justice in this case because Dante's is not guilty. The information that he carried was guilty, but it wasn't Dante's who had masterminded it or who was even part of it.
Yeah.
And so he locks him up simply to protect his own fortunes and prospects.
Yeah.
And he cares about his career far too much. It's just a little too much. And then for chapter 8, all I wrote for him was treacherous dog because he locked Edmund up. I don't like that guy. There are several guys that I hate. Yeah, so the 3 people to watch out for are Villefort, Fernand, and Danglars. They are the masterminds and the bad guys who Dante's is going to go after when he gets out of prison.
Yeah.
Sorry to spoil it, but that's what he does. Caderousse he was part of it a little bit, but he kind of likes Dante's a little bit.
Yeah.
He didn't really help in the process too much.
Honestly, I think the only thing that Caderousse really has against Dante's is, as it mentions, his debt. He's only there because he's give me the money.
Yeah, with the money. He's a coward. Caderousse is a coward. He is jealous of Dante's, but he doesn't hate him really.
Yeah, no. And you can tell by the fact that he stood up for him.
He stood up for him, and he doesn't like it that he's in prison.
Yeah.
All right. I think those are all the main characters. There were some other ones that I took notes on that were a little bit more minor that I did not put in here. But yeah, that was the big stuff. All right.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Next week will be next.
Yeah, so we're going to
chapters.
Get into Dante's time in the Chateau d'If in prison. Mm-hmm. We're also going to talk a little bit about, there's several chapters immediately following this section that take place in Paris in the court of the king.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're going to talk about that a little bit in the next section. So we'll talk about that, Chateau d'If, and we might get into how he gets out. I'm not sure. I don't know how far I'm going to go because he's going to get out, and then we're going to proceed from there.
Yeah. I guess it kind of depends on how fast you read.
Yeah, depends. It depends how many chapters. If it's more than maybe 10, maybe I won't include it. But I don't know. We'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, so that's all for this week.
That's all we got.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, and stay tuned. Yeah. There's more coming.
Yeah, see you.